All right, and with that, we're back. Episode 3 of West Coast Heat Check. We're just getting the series going. That is the Deits. They're wearing the Nevada polo. That's Robert Deiters, the big skinny, reporting live from right across the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. And for those of you who just are noticing, we have a brand new guest for tonight's broadcast. That is Kevin Dana, all the way from the Bay Area. He is the voice, the play-by-play man for the G League Santa Cruz Warriors. You have that poster there in the back. And we're really excited to have you on. He's also, we'll talk about this later in the episode, he's also an author. That is a first, an author for this, unless Deits has some sort of book that we don't know about. First of all, Kevin, how are you doing? How's the family doing? Are you safe? Are you healthy? What's going on?
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me on. I'm doing well. I apologize for my crappy internet connection. For some reason, I just got a little sign that said my network bandwidth is low. So I apologize if you guys lose me at any second. But yeah, me and my cat Bacon are hanging out in our apartment, and yeah, we've so far we've avoided the coronavirus. So hopefully that continues.
You have a cat named Bacon. I mean, there's just so much you bring to the table. And one of the main things we want to talk about is, of course, your gig with Santa Cruz. So, how'd you get the gig, and how has it been working with those guys?
Yeah, it's been awesome, man. I started with the team back in 2012. Actually, Robert Dieters was one of the first people I told that I got the job, actually, because I was kind of keeping it under wraps. I told my parents and maybe a couple of friends, and like he found out like 2 days later. For some reason, I decided to tell this kid that I had just met 6 weeks ago after we were doing a Sarah football game against the mighty Irish of Sacred Heart Cathedral. And yeah, I got it because I worked with the Stanford basketball team and I knew a bunch of people that turned out to be connected with the then Dakota Wizards that turned into the Santa Cruz Warriors. I knew the GM through my connections with Stanford basketball, and I Facebook messaged him in like November of 2011, year before they moved. Like, if you guys move this team, I want to be a radio guy. He's like, there's a lot of things that need to happen, but you're my guy if we do. I interviewed twice, lucky enough to have had the job for 8 years, going into my ninth season now. So I love it.
That's awesome. I'm going to ask one question before I just move it over to Dietz and the big skinny, our other guys here today. So the one thing also I wanted to ask is, of course, this is, of all of your years doing Santa Cruz, the most unprecedented year. What is the protocol for you and for the athletic team for this season?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we are going to be broadcasting our games remotely. Any game that is not on ESPN. So 13 of the 15 regular season games, and who knows about the playoffs. But we will be broadcasting those 13 non ESPN games on NBC Sports Bay Area or the Plus channel. If there's a conflict with Golden State, there's like 4 conflicts I want to say with the Warriors, maybe 3. But we will be broadcasting our games from our home arena in Kaiser Permanente Arena. We'll actually be broadcasting either from like the court where we normally broadcast a home game, or they will put us in the weight room next door. If I don't think we will now because most of the college teams have moved out. They were using the Santa Cruz Warriors home floor for their games if they were from Santa Clara County. But now that restriction has been lifted. So I don't think we'll have any conflicts, but if we do, if like UC Santa Cruz has a volleyball game or something, then we will go into the weight room and broadcast games. So it'll be a little different, like you mentioned, unprecedented. But we broadcast road games remotely last year from our arena, so we're pretty used to it by this point.
Well, Kevin, I just want to say thank you for being on, and it's good to see my former partner back and doing bigger and better things as always. But I do want to, keep going with the whole G League. This is their bubble and this is their big test. NBA did it last season. They saw big success with it in Orlando. Do you think the G League is ready for this type of bubble? I mean, there's not that many games. It's 15 games and a single elimination playoff format. Tell me your opinion about this 15 game regular season and playoff format.
Yeah, so I mean, if it's anything like the first 2 bubbles that the NBA umbrella produced, this should be smooth sailing if they're able to adhere to health and safety protocols, which they did in the NBA bubble and the WNBA bubble. No games had to be postponed or no games had to be canceled for coronavirus reasons. I think there was an inconclusive test or two in the WNBA bubble, but all those games eventually got played. They played a full 22 game season in the IMG bubble in Bradenton, Florida for the WNBA. Of course, the NBA had its last 8 regular season, quote unquote, seeding games and then the playoffs. And there were no positive coronavirus tests. So this is really their third go around. And the first 2 went off without a hitch. So it would be hard pressed for me to think that they would run into major hiccups this time around.
Okay. My first question is going to be going straight into the Santa Cruz Warriors team. What we're going to be seeing in terms of the players on the court in Orlando. So I'm gonna go over 2 guys for you, Kevin. The first one is Jordan Poole. He got a ton of playing time last year. He got about 22 minutes a game last year because of all the injuries the Warriors were picking up last year. He has opted to go to Orlando to get the reps to see that, hopefully his chances in the bubble could give him some more minutes later on in the season for the Golden State Warriors. How is Jordan Poole going to fit into the Santa Cruz Warriors lineup in that minutes rotation?
Well, if last year's any indication, Big Skinny, it's gonna be a pretty seamless transition. He struggled at the beginning of his rookie season with Golden State. He struggled a decent bit. He got assigned for 3 games, and I could pull it up. He averaged something like 25 or 26 in those 3 games. I was just filling out some of my Santa Cruz Warriors prep. Well, hold on. Let me get you some more accurate information here. He averaged 26 points per game in 3 games with Santa Cruz. Obviously a small sample size, but shot 46 from the field, 42 from 3, 80% from the foul line. And after he came up back to Golden State after that 3-game stint with the C-Dubs, he really improved, and he had a stretch. His final 13 games of his rookie season, he averaged 14 points per game and shot at 47% from the field. So he kind of used that to really take off a little bit. I mean, you can't say a guy took off if he averaged 8.8 points per game. That's a decent number for a rookie who was number 28 overall, but it's not like he was in the rookie of the year running, but he really improved after that stint in Santa Cruz. And hopefully he has a similar jump when he comes back from the bubble in Orlando. But I think he's going to fit in quite well with the C-Dubs. And his last game before going to Orlando, he was on fire. He had 16 points, hit a few threes in a big win over Detroit, and hopefully that'll carry over for him.
Oh yeah, that's all I'm looking for. Just to add a little more depth to the Golden State Warriors moving forward. I think that's their real Achilles heel at the moment is depth at certain spots, and Jordan Poole being like kind of like a hybrid in a way, like a small forward. He also works as a shooting guard as well. And then also the second player I want to talk about, and this just came up recently, and it's Jeremy Lin. He opted out of going back to China for the moment. He got offered a ton of money, like 7 figures, to possibly play in China. He wants another shot in the NBA, and he's going to Orlando. He's going to play with the Santa Cruz Warriors. How's he going to fit into the team? And then my second question for in regards to Jeremy Lin would be, how good are his chances if he plays well to get the opportunity to battle Brad Wanamaker for that backup point guard position for the Golden State Warriors?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. I'll just generally start with Jeremy and the fact that I'm surprised he's not on an NBA team right now. He had a bad 12-game stretch with the Toronto Raptors. He was talking with the media yesterday, actually, Tuesday night, from Orlando, and he's like, there was a bad 12-game stretch in Toronto that kind of cost me. That was at the end of the 18-19 season. He got his ring with the Dinosaurs and then was out of the league last year. But this is a guy who averages 11 and a half points per game for his career. I mean, everyone remembers Linsanity, but really, his career after that was just as solid. I mean, the year after, 13.3 points, more than 6 assists as a full-time starting point guard for the Houston Rockets. He averaged double figures for like 6-7 straight years and was at 9.5 points per game in 18-19. Like, this guy is a producer at the highest of levels. I was shocked that he was not on an NBA roster last year. This is actually, to answer your question about how he'll fit with the G League team, this is actually not the first time he's been assigned by Golden State to the G League. Way back in his rookie year, 10 years ago now, way back when, he was assigned to the Reno Bighorns when that was the G League or the D League affiliate at the time of the Golden State Warriors. They shared that team with the Sacramento Kings. So he's used to kind of going back and forth from the NBA and the G League. And I think he had one game with Erie before he went on that Linsanity run in the 2011-12 season. I mean, sometimes you get these super vets in the G League and they just dominate. And I know that Santa Cruz is going to want to take a look at a lot of guys, and I'm not saying Jeremy Lin's going to average 30 points and 12 assists a game, but I do expect him to be a real big factor in what the C-Dubs do this year. And then, it's going to be a 15-game sample size, and we'll see where Golden State is at roster-wise after that. Hopefully, I don't think a Kevon Looney or James Wiseman injury, though those are supposed to be just a week or two, so that shouldn't factor into kind of roster moves going forward, especially with how important those two are. If they were to get another big, it wouldn't be Jeremy Lin because he doesn't play that position. But I like what Brad Wanamaker's done with Golden State. He's really dished out the rock nicely the last couple of games. It brings a nice, calm, steadying presence. I don't, the thing about playing in the G League is Jeremy Lin isn't exactly just auditioning for the Warriors. He's auditioning for all 30 NBA teams. And if he shows, which I expect he will, that he still has it, some team's going to take the bait, and it likely wouldn't be Golden State because there are going to be 29 other teams that are going to want his services potentially.
Rob?
To go more into that, I mean, we talk about the Warriors, but is there any other teams that really stand out in this G League bubble? Any team you want to mention? Any players you're really expecting to have such a high presence or have a great 15-game stretch?
Well, I think the primary reason why we have this bubble is because of the G League Ignite, because you have these preps the pros dudes who are getting paid six figures, some near or right at $500,000 to play in games in a G League sponsored event. And it would have been such a shame if the G League couldn't pull off a season of some sort when you had guys like Jonathan Kuminga and Jalen Green, pretty much bona fide top 5 picks in the 2021 NBA draft under your umbrella, and you wouldn't get them any sort of game action in front of scouts or on national television. That would have really been disappointing, and I'm glad that the season's going to happen primarily for that reason, because this is the team that people want to see. You've got 2 top 5 picks. You also have Dacian Nix, who's a projected second rounder. Isaiah Todd's a guy who might go in the second round as well. A definite potential future NBA guy. Then you have some international up and comers on that team, and a Kai Soto and a Principal Singh. So you have the ties to the Philippines, which has a great basketball fan base there, in India, which of course NBA is really trying to tap into that market with their basketball without borders programs and everything. And then you have the vets on that team. You got Amir Johnson on that team, Jarrett Jack, It's an interesting mix, and that's what they want. They wanted the team to be half veterans and half of these preps to pros, 18-year-olds who are choosing this route instead of playing college basketball. So this is going to be, I think that's going to be the team that really has a lot of people's attention.
Follow-up question with that as well. You mentioned one of the vets on that team and Jarrett Jack. We remember him from his Golden State Warriors days and him having a consistency in the NBA. Do you think this 15-game stretch could maybe get Jarrett Jack back in the league and maybe just get a veteran minimum contract somewhere?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the vets are there as much to mentor the younger kids as much as they are to advance their professional basketball careers. The way I understand, I mean, obviously, you tell Jarrett Jack that he has an NBA contract, he is going to take it for sure. He was a heck of an NBA player. He's also 37 years old right now, and he's approaching a coaching career if that's what he wants. And I think that's also kind of an appeal for him to be with G League Ignite. He's such a highly regarded player on and off the court that you kind of look at him and you think future coach. And this could be kind of the step one for him. But of course, if he impresses, he's been good in the G League when he's been healthy the last couple of years with the Sioux Falls Skyforce. The problem is he hasn't always been healthy and been able to be on the floor. But when he's been out there, he's been good. I wouldn't put it past the team if they need a veteran backup point guard for a playoff push. They see, oh, hey, Jarrett Jack did such and such in the bubble in Orlando. He could certainly be an option. But obviously 37 years old is not going to help his cause, but he's still a heck of a player.
We're joined by Kevin Dana. He's the play-by-play voice of the Santa Cruz Warriors, the G League affiliate of the Golden State Warriors. We're so glad to have you on, Kevin. Steven, were you going to ask something too?
I just have just one more question, if I may. So I'm more of the pessimistic guy in this situation. Unfortunately, I gotta force you with this question. And we're talking about a 15-game season, including playoffs, Kevin. You're talking about 18 teams. You're not seeing all the affiliates, G League affiliates for the NBA teams going to Orlando. Even like the Wizards and the Pelicans, they have combined a team similar to what the Warriors and the Kings did back in the day, but that was for a normal season. This is a bubble. This is 15-game season, 18 teams. And you mentioned, you kind of answered it already kind of with the G League Ignite, but is this really worth it for the NBA financially speaking, hosting a bubble similar to what they did with, was it like 16 or 17 NBA teams back in June?
Yeah, I think that from a G League perspective, there were two things that would take the G League to the next level. This is kind of what I've always said to myself. One would be for all-stars and superstars to not just practice with G League teams, but play in G League games like on a rehab assignment like you would see with minor league baseball. You said Madison Bumgarner down to the San Jose Giants to throw a couple innings back when he was with the San Francisco Giants. And the other thing, and we've seen those, superstars practice. Steph Curry practice with Santa Cruz. DeMarcus Cousins practice with Santa Cruz. Manu Ginobili practice with the San Antonio Spurs back in the day. Rajon Rondo practice with the Maine Red Claws. We've seen these guys practice. We haven't seen them play in a game yet. And I think that like the closest thing we've had to like a guy in or close to his prime playing in a G League game or choosing to on assignment would probably be Brandon Jennings. While he was still doing his thing, he wanted to get a couple of games in the G League to get his feet underneath him. But to have like that all-star caliber make that leap. The number two was to get the top high school recruits to play in the G League for 1 year before they go to the NBA. And they crossed that one off their list when they got Jalen Green to sign with G League Ignite and then get Jonathan Kuminga reclassified and then hop on this team as well. Those are 2 top 5 picks. And it would be too big of an opportunity to be missed if you don't get those guys in front of scouts and in front of people on TV sets when they could have gone to college and been on national TV, 20 to 25 times this year. So I think you had to do it for that reason alone. And, this is a season that's going to be different. Teams are, are already losing revenue because of not being able to have fans in games. There's always been the cost of development. Might as well continue to develop your guys as well. And it's not just for the players; it's for coaches that they want to develop on those staffs as well. So obviously, I'm gonna say that it's worth it. I'm a G League guy. I've been a G League guy, now on my 9th season, and I like the paychecks that I get from broadcasting the Santa Cruz Warriors game. So obviously, I am biased, but I think with the G League Ignite reason alone, this season is worth it.
And just one follow-up point. You mentioned Brandon Jennings being like the biggest guy. There was recent word like in the last few days that Dennis Smith, like he's fallen out of favor with Tom Thibodeau in New York. He was a former first-round pick. He was doing really well with Dallas before that Porzingis trade. He voluntarily opted to go down to Orlando to get more reps. And similar to what you said about Jeremy Lin, if it's not to go back to the Knicks, he can probably find a decent spot, a decent role for another team.
Yeah, I don't know his stats right off the top of my head. I'm trying to pull this up, and hopefully my internet connection obliges. But yeah, all right, thankfully it does. I mean, as a rookie, which was only 3 years ago, he averaged more than 15 points a game for the Dallas Mavericks. Like, this guy's legit. And it's just the reason his numbers have been down is because his PT has gone down. He hasn't been able to get as much burn on the floor. So yeah, I can't wait to see Dennis Smith Jr. Play for the Westchester Knicks and get things going in the G League bubble. And just to clarify one comment I said earlier, obviously, like, the G League has had players that have gone on to have maybe better careers than Brandon Jennings. No disrespect to Brandon Jennings, he dropped 55 in an NBA game. But, like, there's been a Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet. Those guys have played in the G League, but that was before they had kind of made the noise in the NBA that they have made today. Brandon Jennings had already made that noise and elected to come back. So that's why, like, that's the name that kind of sticks out to me. I'm probably forgetting a couple, but there's been a lot of guys who have gone on to have, like, big careers in the NBA. Chris Middleton's another one, a guy who's been assigned. Patty Mills, and I can name a million others. But, like, Brandon Jennings was kind of the guy that was like, oh, wow, he's getting assigned. Interesting. So I would like to see in the future more guys like that. And Dennis Smith Jr. certainly add some credibility there.
Yeah, well, Kevin, it's been quite a blast. We'd love to talk more about G League. We're obviously a little short on time. Before we go, Rob, do you have one more question for him?
Kevin, I got one more question for you. I got to say, broadcast for the G League Warriors is better than broadcasting with me, with the Sarah Padres, or is it better with the G League Warriors?
Oh, that's a tough one. It's always fun hanging out with you, Deits, especially when I'm beating you in poker online. That's some of my favorite times. But yeah, the paychecks that Sarah, as cool as it was, just doesn't quite match up to doing a professional basketball in the G League. So sorry, Deits.
Wow, on our own show. Well, I refuse to go out like that. Before we go, we have to ask you. You are the first broadcaster I've ever heard who's an author. What book do you have? Shout it out. Let us know about it and what exactly you talk about in there.
Yeah, so I've published one. It sold about 25 copies, maybe 21. It was not a New York Times bestseller, to say the least. That one's called A Eulogy for Professional Basketball in Idaho. It kind of takes us through the history of the Idaho Stampede, because I was also at the last game in Idaho Stampede's history because they were playing the Santa Cruz Warriors, and I kind of try to paint that last game through the eyes of this season ticket holder who had been there since day one. And I sat with this guy courtside and kind of reminisced on the history of this franchise that was going away, that we knew that was going to be moving to Salt Lake City since they've been bought by the Utah Jazz. So I hope you can still find that on Amazon or wherever you buy books online. It's only an ebook. I wasn't going to go through the trouble of creating hard copies of that, especially when I wasn't selling a whole lot. And then I'm working on a book right now, which is pretty much done. It's just in the hands of Golden State PR about the 2015 championship season of the Santa Cruz Warriors. And it's as much about winning the championship as it is about the players who didn't quite get to the NBA or who got to the NBA but weren't able to stick. And despite being these incredible basketball players, whether it was injuries or contractual stuff, why it just didn't quite work out. And those are the stories that I've always been enamored by. And there were some incredible players who never had a chance to stick in the NBA from that team. And it's kind of an homage to those that get forgotten by the basketball world.
Well, as I'm sure accomplished you are as an author, I think you're better off on the mic, and we look forward to hearing you, and I'm sure plenty others for the Santa Cruz Warriors start in a few days. Kevin, thank you during your busy preparation schedule to take some time to join us, and we look forward to hearing you in a couple days. All right, that was the G League voice of the Santa Cruz Warriors, affiliate of the Golden State Warriors. That is Kevin Dana. It was a blast. Where can we catch Kevin Dana on social media?
Well, you could find him on Twitter, Nick, at lowercase KEVO 408. And shout out to Kevin Dana, great guest. So happy to have him on. One of my favorite broadcast partners I ever got to have during my high school career. Learned so much and just gives out so much knowledge. And I think Steven can concur, but he actually gave us tickets to a G League Warriors game that it was me, Steven, and a couple other buddies got to go to. And Steven actually competed in one of the events at a G League Warriors game.
Really?
Yeah, the tricycle that I had to maneuver around the court was too small for me. My knee kept hitting the handlebar, so I carried the bike and went around, maneuvered my way around the court, but I was DQ'd, so I lost. But I got cool sunglasses in reward for that, so that's all. I'm a happy camper at the end of the day.
Yeah, I guess all your cramping, it reminds me, I didn't know you were 6'5", but I guess we all learn something every now and then. It was a blast with Kevin. We're looking forward to having more guests join us on the West Coast Heat Check. We're just getting started with this podcast. That on the bottom, that's the Deits, Robert Deiters. On the side, the big skinny 6'5" Stephen Hughes. And then I'm of course the host, Nick Rice. So we usually do headlines to start the show. We'll kick it off now with the Washington Wizards. And very rarely does any NBA show headline lead with the Wizards, but Bradley Beal's crushing it this year. He's the league leader in points this year. But I want to bring up, before I toss it over to you guys, two stats that during the pre-show Robert just alluded to. I went a little closer in depth. So the Wizards are right now the worst scoring defense in the NBA. And there are only 3 teams in NBA history that have given up over 125 points per game in a year. They're giving up 121 and a half. So they are right in the conversation of the worst defenses in NBA history. And right now they're giving up 39% shooting from 3. That's the 4th worst if they keep that pace for the season in NBA history. So Bradley Beal scoring 40 a night is amazing, but Deits, I'll start with you. The question is that sustainable, and is that winning basketball?
It's definitely not winning basketball, Nick. And when you have Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal, I've mentioned on this show last week that Russell Westbrook was my cold player, even though he's almost averaging a triple-double. He was one of the main reasons why they did beat the Brooklyn Nets in such a big-time game and got 2 big three-pointers in less than 10 seconds. Crazy. And they won the game. It was insane. But that's not winning basketball. That's not a winning culture. And Bradley Beal doesn't want to be traded because he wants to bring a winning culture to the Washington Wizards. Now, you have 2 superstars right now, but I feel like the Wizards have to become a big 3 to make this happen. Now, you maybe have to give up some young pieces, but I think the Wizards, what they should do at this point is maybe do what Brooklyn does. Just have 3 big superstars to put a lot of vets in and maybe have one or two guys develop as you go to make this team come out of their record being 4-13 and come out of this funk.
The big skinny. Do you think Bradley Beal gets traded?
I don't think he's going to get traded. I think that, I mean, in my personal opinion, I think I'm going to take Russell Westbrook out of the equation. I'm going to say over the last few years, as Bradley Beal has developed to become an all-star caliber player, he's for more or less, he's been kind of like the Robin to the Batman for Washington Wizards, the Batman being John Wall. And you really got to see, like, okay, now Bradley Beal's getting into that elite caliber once John Wall was sidelined with that injury last season. Or 2 seasons ago, he didn't even play any games last year, John Wall. So it's interesting to me. I think that with Bradley Beal, he should ride the ship. He's not going to get traded, but he's got free agency coming up in the 2022 season. I don't think Washington is the best place to make a big three. Russell Westbrook, in my opinion, he's a glorified stat patter. He is not someone that should be part of your big three. He's already been a part of a big three and did not win anything with that big three when he was with Kevin Durant and James Harden in Oklahoma City. Were they a little bit before their primes? Absolutely. But they were still part. When we look back on things, we technically consider that a big three. It was their big three against the Miami big three, which was LeBron, Chris Bosh, and Dwayne Wade. We'll get to those guys later on the show. But with Bradley Beal, I think that he's definitely in the conversation of a big three type of team player. Obviously he's not going to go to the Nets. Obviously he's not going to go to the Warriors or something. But he's a guy that he could take a pay cut if he wants to go for that ring and go create a big three somewhere else. Personally, for me, Washington is not it, but I think he's definitely in that category now, among the ranks of Kevin Durant or Kyrie Irving, James Harden, Steph, Clay, for example.
Mm-hmm. So Russell Westbrook has the numbers, and I think you can agree Nikola Jokic, who is the reigning Western Conference Player of the Week, has the production, not just statistically, but win-loss wise. What are your thoughts of Jokic and where he ranks right now among the NBA elites?
I mean, for me, we'll get more into MVP conversation on a later date, but for me, he's number 2 on the MVP list. I mean, the guy has been absolutely insane. His player efficiency rating. I'm like the per guy on this show.
You are, geez.
The advanced, the metrics and all. He's number 1 in the league. I mean, without Nikola Jokic on the Denver Nuggets are at best they're a fringe team, a fringe playoff team, without a doubt. Because you take out Jokic out of the equation, and it's Jamal Murray and the ensemble group. I would say like a C+ ensemble group. Nikola Jokic is an absolute baller. I mean, he's averaging. I'll pull up the stats right now.
Yeah,
Jokic.
Go for it.
He's averaging a little less than 27 a game. He's averaging 12 rebounds, 8.5 assists. He's averaging a little less than 2 steals a game. Those are all career highs. He's shooting at a career high pace right now at 57% from the field. I mean, this guy is on a whole new level, and he's carrying the Nuggets to number 3 in the Western Conference, which outside of LA, that's the best team in the Western Conference. And you already know about LA, they have all the money to spend. With Nikola Jokic, he's doing this. He's on a tear with this, outside of him, an average team. Mm-hmm. So if there wasn't a guy named LeBron James in this world, he would without a doubt be number 1 on the MVP talk list. But I mean, he's still underappreciated in my opinion, and unfortunately that's got to do with the fact that he's an international player. We haven't seen the entire journey of Nikola Jokic up to this point. This guy Nikola Jokic, he's out of Serbia. We didn't see him playing in high school or wherever that equivalent is in Serbia. We didn't see him play when he was in, I believe he was in the EuroLeague for a little bit, but we like that when we see that from Russell Westbrook when he went to UCLA, started with the Thunder, and then and now he's like insane when he's putting up these triple double numbers in a season. Again, he's a glorified stat pattern, but we all love him. And this guy, and Nikola Jokic, he's at a very similar level to Russell Westbrook, but he's behind LeBron James right now, which to me is very unfortunate. He's underappreciated, and I think that this season is showing how really, really talented he is, and also the talent that we can be seeing moving forward with international players, starting with him and Luka Doncic and Joel Embiid.
Rob?
To go off of that, the Denver Nuggets, they proved a lot last year. They were in the Western Conference Finals. And as Steven said, if there wasn't a LeBron James in the world, things could have been different. But give credit to Jokic for what he's done. I think the Denver Nuggets have just gotten so much better. They brought some young talent in. Him and Jamal Murray have been that duo, but they're not like a known dynamic duo, as Steven said. It's more of a Jokic type of show for Denver. And Denver has actually been really good team stat wise. Points per game, they're top 5. Assists per game, they're top 3 in that list with 27.2 per game. That's a really, and Jokic does pass around that basketball because he is double team most of that time, so he knows how to find the open man. Denver has really proved to be one of those top Western Conference teams. It's just unbelievable how big men have just changed the game into not being a center that doesn't really shoot threes, from centers being an all-around type of player like Joel Embiid and Jokic have really just keep improving their game as they go along. And Jokic has started has been a starter since the 2017-2018 season, and is just, we keep seeing him just keep getting better and better every year. And I expect the Denver Nuggets to eventually, I believe they are going to make a finals within the next 2 to 3 seasons once Michael Porter gets his game better and they got Bol going. And Bol's really been, I believe, learning a lot from Jokic, and Bol and Jokic are such a great dynamic duo center wise. I think once Bol gets a little bit, bigger, a little bit more muscle on him, I think that's a scary 2 centers to be looking at on one team alone.
Yeah, it took about 7 minutes for you to bring up Bol. It was only a matter of time. As much as you are, Steven, a PER guy, I'm a VORP guy. I like value over replacement player. Quickly, before we move on, what are your thoughts of Nikola Jokic not just having the league lead in value over replacement player and box score plus minus, but second place, which is Luka in both of those categories? LeBron is third in both. They're not even close. A box score plus minus, Jokic is 10.6. The next closest is 8.3. And then value over replacement player, Jokic is 2.3. The next one is 1.8. It's insane. He's running away with those stat leads.
Unfortunately, the basketball world, they don't really appreciate advanced metrics like the baseball world does. And that in the advanced metrics in the baseball world, that is really a big part of the equation when you're discussing who is a real MVP, because at the end of the day, like average home runs and RBIs, they don't really speak to the real value that a player offers in baseball. Unfortunately, in basketball, the equivalent of average home runs and RBIs would be points, rebounds, assists. You have the value of someone, a majority of it, I would say, on that. But there's more to it as well. And you just mentioned with the VORP that it's not even close. But we value the triple double now, especially over the last 5 years, with Russell Westbrook really being the pioneer of this movement, where you want a guy that does everything, not just 1 or 2 things. And Nikola Jokic can definitely do that. And it's more impressive, in my opinion, that a center can be more like a point center, in which your job already as a center is to score points and to grab rebounds, because you're one of the tallest guys in the court, but also to have the IQ, the consistent IQ to average 8.5 assists per game, and to do that at the highest level. Russell Westbrook, he can already do the points and assists. He already has the IQ, but with the rebounds, you can obviously there is physical evidence that you can see players move, his own teammates moving out of the way so that he can grab a rebound.
Mhm.
Grabbing a rebound is not really that much of a talent. If you're tall, you're going to grab a lot of rebounds. Look at Hassan Whiteside. He's not that good of a player, but the dude's 7'1", I believe. And leads is the franchise leader for the Miami Heat in rebounds per game. He averages like 14 a game. It's insane because he's tall. It's not too much talent. So that's why I respect Jokic's almost triple double over Westbrook's triple double, in my opinion.
All right. Well, we're off and running, and you brought up Hassan Whiteside, the Miami Heat leader in rebounds. That's a great segue to our next team we are putting the face-off with. For those of you who are joining us for the very first time, the West Coast Heat Check every week breaks down the top 5 players of every franchise in the NBA. We started with Orlando, and then last week, refresh my memory. What team do we do?
Portland.
Portland. Yeah, we did Portland. All right. All right. I'm dealing with dementia. So our next team up, third on the list, is Miami. And Deits, we'll start with you because I have a very fascinating opinion about where you have Shaquille O'Neal. Go ahead. Let the fans know where you place your top 5 Miami Heat.
Ooh, okay. So, I mean, if we're going to give honorable mentions this early that Nick mentioned, Shaquille O'Neal is considered an honorable mention
Wow.
in my top 5 list. And you got to give one to Haslam. I mean, he's still on the team, currently injured for the Miami Heat right now, but 18 seasons with Miami. How crazy is that? And has won all 3 championships with them as well. So I'm going to start with number 5. Miami's such an interesting team, by the way, with how many players really do stick around, get injured, come back in their careers to finish with Miami. But we're going to first start off with my number 5. He became part of the Big Three. He was one of the reasons that the Big Three formed. Chris Bosh, power forward, originally played with the Toronto Raptors, was an all-star his entire time with Miami. And his number is retired. Number 1 is hanging up in the Rapids right now for Miami. But man, Chris Bosh, dynamic power forward / center. He really just had to play a big role in a sense, again, the boards and getting the points as well, especially if LeBron or Wade was struggling. If looking at his stats, his best season was 2014, 2015, 21 points a game. I just look at Chris Bosh as such a dynamic player coming from Toronto. He wanted to become a part of a championship culture, and he really embraced being a Miami Heat and wanted to join the D Wade and LeBron James bus and comes out with 2 championships, 4 straight final appearances. Fortunately, his career got ended short, and now he's looking for a front office job. And I heard Miami might be looking into bringing in Chris Bosh, but got to give Chris Bosh credit going to 4 straight finals. Now I got to go with number 4. And this is where I thought maybe, yeah, I could put Shaq at the number 4. But a player that I believe that got the Miami Heat out of playoff funk way back in the day and also made a big time shot to win their first series. This was in the 96-97 season. Originally was with the Golden State Warriors, moved over to the Miami Heat. Tim Hardaway, he won the first playoff series for Miami to send them to the playoffs. And Alfonso Mourning was also a part of that crew as well. Now, what I love about Tim Hardaway is just the backstory behind what he did for Miami. He was their best 3-point shooter, and for history, he actually leads in 3-point percentage for the Miami Heat. So that's why he is my number 4. He went 6 straight times to the playoffs with Miami back in the day until the early 2000s, and he was a 2-time NBA All-Star as well. So I'm going to pick that as my number 4. Now, number 3, Alonzo Mourning. This man was a big-time name. Originally started with the Charlotte Hornets and then creeped over to the Miami Heat. Now, he wasn't much of an all-star during his Heat career. He was actually 5 times to be exact. But he was with Charlotte. Then he goes to Miami. And such an interesting story is he struggles with injuries with the New Jersey Nets, dealing from a kidney disease, comes back and plays with the New Jersey Jets, doesn't play a huge role. Wasn't really a starter, but he came back to the league, got off the injury, thought he was going to be retired. Very big comeback story. Then we talk about one of the players that did return to Miami. One of the big reasons why finals. One of the big reasons why the Miami Heat won their first finals really helped out when Shaq was injured. Mourning had to step up, and Mourning started for Shaq in games that Shaq was injured, and then we saw them both on the floor, and then we saw Dwayne Wade, considered the Flash. They win that first championship together, and Mourning really was a big time reason why I was such a big Miami Heat fan. I was actually a Miami Heat fan as a kid. I think I just really like the logo. I love the basketball with the fire. I mean, we had the West Coast Heat check, and
Yeah, with the Flames.
Isn't that crazy to think about? But I loved what Mourning brought to Miami, and him returning back, I think just was one of the big reasons why I really love this type of guy. And he came back and won a championship in the first one in franchise history. So with Miami, Mourning is in my top 3. I mean, he brought a lot of culture to Miami, and I think a lot of growth to Dwayne Wade, and helping getting Shaq, and him and Shaq being such a dynamic down low. I mean, that really helped out Wade win a championship as well. Now we go to number 2. I'm going to go with LeBron James. In his 4 I know this was a short time period for LeBron James and Chris Bosh to even be there. And there could be, you could include Haslam. I'm saying if Steven does include Haslam, there's a lot of great reasons why you have Haslam in your top 5. And Shaquille O'Neal was not as around as much as LeBron James and Chris Bosh were, and I think achieved a lot more in their short time periods. LeBron James with the 4 straight finals with Miami, finally got his first one in 2011-2012 season. And man, LeBron James and Dwayne Wade were averaging over 25 points a game together alone, and were main reasons why that championship really did form. LeBron James made the big decision to go to Miami. He wanted to go to a winning culture, and he did. Eric Spoelstra was the head coach, and I think really helped shape LeBron James to saying, hey, you've made it to a finals before. Now we can make it here and actually go all the way and win it. Well, he did that exact thing. And Miami Heat fans will always love LeBron James for bringing home 2 more championships in Miami, and got to play with one of his best friends, Dwayne Wade. And Dwayne Wade took so many sacrifices for this team. LeBron James got paid, Bosh got paid. But when we go to that number 1, it's crazy to think Dwayne Wade, and we talk about how big of an impact this man was in the NBA. I think I really loved Dwayne Wade's game. He was a fast guy. He wasn't really a big 3-point shooter until later on in his career. He was just a really fast guy that just got to the rim all the time because of his speed. He was just one of the fast guys. He had the speed of De'Aaron Fox when he was back in his young prime time, but his prime time was also when the Heat did win the championships, and that was also a part of when LeBron James and Chris Bosh were there. But Wade has been through so much. I mean, he's a father. He's been such a great figure in the NBA world. I mean, everyone's going to remember this man for being a 5th overall pick in the 2003 NBA draft, winning a championship all the way in 06 to winning one all the way in 2011-2012 season, and then winning 2 straight and going to 4 straight finals, going to 5 finals total. It's just wild. I'm not going to give out. I feel like I could give out numbers, but I mean, if we're going to say his best season points per game was 30.2 in the 08-09 season. But him returning from Miami, he went back to his hometown, Chicago, comes back. Well, he doesn't come back yet. He goes to Cleveland. Doesn't even play that many games. He plays 46 games and started 3. Then comes back to Miami, and man, Heat fans were just amazed by by him just coming back alone. He took so many pay cuts, so many sacrifices, didn't make over 25 million a season. His most he made was with the Chicago Bulls, and he wasn't even in his prime. He had an opt-out, and he opted out the next season. He only played once. He played with Jimmy Butler, but he was a 3-time NBA champion, 3-time All-Defense, 2009, 2010 MVP, was a scoring champ in the 08-09 season, 8-time All-Star. He was on the All-Rookie in 2003, 2004. And he was the Finals MVP in the 2005-2006 season. Great resume, future Hall of Famer. And it's also weird to say that out of my top 5 list, Mourning is the only Hall of Famer out of that top 5 list. And I could have mentioned Shaq as being in the other one, but Mourning is the only Hall of Famer in that top 5 list. But I mean, we'll see what Bosch gets. I don't know if Bosch is going to be in that Hall of Fame talk, but I know LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Tim Hardaway's not even in it yet because of controversial issues. But that's my top 5 list. I hope you guys enjoyed it. But honorable mentions, as I said before, Haslam and Shaquille O'Neal.
Yeah, not a bad list, Rob. Thank you. By the way, this is the West Coast Heat Check. That is Deits, Robert Deiters down there, Stephen Hughes as well over there. I'm the host, Nick Rice. We are facing off. So the winner of this face-off is determined the winner of this whole week. It's between Robert and Stephen. And both of those guys have won one of the 2 face-off challenges. Portland was to Robert and Stephen was Orlando. So Stephen, go ahead. Before we get to you, though, I just want to quickly recap. We heard Chris Bosh was your 5th, Tim Hardaway 4, Alonzo Mourning 3, LeBron at 2, and Wade at 1. Not a bad list. What do you think, Stephen?
Not a bad list at all. 1 through 4 for me is actually the exact same. So Tim Hardaway at 4, Alonzo Mourning at 3, LeBron at 2, Dwayne Wade at 1. I don't really need to go any further with that because we're on the same wavelength when it comes to those top 4. I mean, Dwayne Wade is just absolutely, he is Mr. Heat in terms of tenure, how successful he was individually, how successful he brought to the team, and just the team success as well, winning 3 titles, 5 appearances in finals. You don't get that a lot in the NBA, especially these days. LeBron number 2, it was 4 seasons in Miami, but it was arguably his best seasons in his career. You can compare a couple that he's had in his 2nd stint in Cleveland. But I mean, his years in Miami were insane. It reflected on how insane he was in NBA 2K. From 2K11 to 2K14, he was unstoppable. And number 3, Alonzo Mourning. Robert went into detail with him. Number 4, Tim Hardaway, same. But this is a debate. And number 5, you mentioned Chris Bosh, Robert Deiters, the Deits. And you put the big Diesel, the big cactus Superman, Diesel, Shaq on the honorable mentions list. And I don't agree with that. I think Shaq is in the Miami Heat history a better player than Chris Bosh. Even though Chris Bosh, he spent I think it was like 5 or 6 seasons with Miami, and Shaq spent 4. And here are the reasons why I think Shaq's 4-year stint is more impactful in the Heat history than Bosh's 6 years. Chris Bosh will start with the fact that he had 2 players that are better than him. LeBron James in his legit prime was insane. He's unstoppable. And then you also have prime Dwayne Wade, who was also insane. When you talk about the big three with Bosh, LeBron, and D Wade, you talk about those two. You talk about Wade and LeBron. Bosh was more of a complementary piece when things started to actually play out with, the Heat playing those 4 seasons. And yeah, they won 2 rings, but again, he's a compliment. With Shaq, it was really the Shaq and Dwayne Wade show because even though Shaq kind of got kicked out of LA because of Kobe, he was still insane. With Miami, he averaged more points than Chris Bosh. He averaged more rebounds than Chris Bosh. I go back to player efficiency rating, is higher than yeah, absolutely. No debate can happen without PER getting referenced. Dwayne Wade, Shaquille O'Neal, 23.9. Chris Bosh, 19 and a half. He was more of an impactful player for the Miami Heat during his 4-year stint than Chris Bosh was. And it's not by a long, it's pretty close, but for those reasons that I mentioned, going from rebounds per game, PER, points per game, and the fact that if it wasn't Shaq, and although we have Alonzo Mourning on your list, on both of our lists, we're talking about an old, near the end of retirement, Alonzo Mourning, because after the 06 title, he only plays 2 more years, and out of the about 102 games he plays, he starts less than half of them, and he's averaging about around 7 points per game. He's not averaging all that many minutes. He's averaging about 16, 17 minutes. He's more or less a bench player with like a role as a backup star. Without Shaq, I don't think the Heat win that title in 05, 06. Yeah, you could say that Wade is insanely talented, and there's no one that's going to argue that. But without Shaq as that complement to Dwayne Wade, they don't win that title. With Chris Bosh is not as the complement to D Wade and LeBron, I think they could win 1 ring. Maybe not the 2 that they did win, not the 3 or 4 that they should have won, but I think they could have won 1 at least. So for that reason, I have Shaq at number 5, Chris Bosh and Udonis Haslem as my honorable mentions.
Boy, Steven brought the heat today because we're short on time. Usually I would ask most of you guys a follow-up as to that Shaq debate, but unfortunately we don't. I'm going to have to go with Steven to win this one. It's by a very, very narrow margin, about as narrow as Chris Bosh and Shaq was. Robert, you gave great points. Don't get me wrong. Steven brought the heat today. We have 5 minutes left in our broadcast today, so we're going to do a speed round, hot and cold players. I'll kick us off. I believe Giannis and Kevin Durant have been hot. Giannis just recorded a triple-double last night. On Tuesday, KD was 11 for 13. If that isn't hot, I don't know what is. Deiters, unfortunately, the one who fell short today. Please rescue what just happened by telling me your hot 2 players. And by the way, my hot team is the Clippers. They lost to the Nets, but they've won 11 to 13. Just wanted to throw that out there.
So interesting fact with my 2 hot players. I'm going with a current Golden State Warrior and a former Golden State Warrior. I got to go with Stephen Curry. He's been the hot hand. He's been the big time guy. He's been making the points, the shots, the assists, the rebounds. He's been doing all of it. And then Kevin Durant having one of the best seasons that any NBA player can have coming back from a torn ACL. I mean, congratulations, man. I mean, he wants to lead this Brooklyn Nets team and wants to get to a finals. He got Harden and Kyrie Irving. Let's see what he could do, but keep that hot streak going.
Am I supposed to? The hot players for me are going to be 2 Portland Trailblazers, and first one's going to be Damian Lillard. I mean, he's been absolutely insane as of late. He's averaging about just shy of 30 points per game. And Portland, they're actually playing really well. They could be doing a little bit better defensively speaking. I mean, they average 117, which is a high amount. They actually have a negative point differential this year. They'll have to definitely fix that if they're definitely a contender for a playoff run into like a conference semifinals or maybe the conference finals. But Damian Lillard at the helm. I mean, we talked about him last week in our Portland top 5. He's definitely going to be up there at number 1 fairly soon. But he's been absolutely insane over the last few games. And then also let's go with the second Portland Trailblazer is by the name of Enes Kanter, which might be surprising to some of y'all that I mentioned his name, but take a look at this. Give me 1 second, guys. I had the stats right in front of me, but unfortunately, here we go. Bingo.
Too much celebration after your Heat win. I understand.
Hey, I thought I had the right dates and everything, but here we go. This guy, 16 points per game, just 15 rebounds per game in his last 4 against Houston, Chicago, Milwaukee, and Washington. I know we talked about Washington; they can't play defense, so you can kind of pat your stats in a way, especially for rebounds against a team like Washington. But Houston, who is my hot team, they've won 6 in a row. They're on fire. They've actually are gaining momentum after the James Harden trade, and it's all, in my opinion, it's all thanks to Christian Wood of how impactful he has been since coming from Detroit from last season. I mean, going back to Enes Kanter, just insane. These are numbers that I would never expect from Enes Kanter in any game, any number of games stretch. I've always been kind of a big fan of Enes Kanter. With this role in Portland, it's perfect for him. And yeah, I like to see how this continues moving forward. I know going into playoffs, as the lineups start to get smaller and smaller and teams rely on shooting the ball from the perimeter, from downtown, you will probably see less of him if Portland makes the playoffs. But for right now, he's doing a terrific job.
All right, well, that was all the time we had. We'll get to cold players next week. I am Nick Rice. That was Robert Deiters, Stephen Hughes, Kevin Dana, the play-by-play voice of the G League Warriors affiliate, the Santa Cruz Warriors. Their season begins on February 10th. Make sure to catch him in his broadcast and keep it locked to Warriors.com, as he is the first announcer I've ever heard who has a book coming out, a second one, breaking down the 2015 Santa Cruz Warriors championship season. Next week, Andrew Nepsund out of Reno, Nevada. He is a news sports reporter and also a weekend anchor for KTVN2 News. He is also going to be joining us, Robert Deiters, Stephen Hughes, and I on the West Coast Heat Check. So episode 3 is in the books. We'll be back next Thursday morning to break down anything and everything you need to know in the NBA. Good night from all of us right here on the West Coast Heat Check.